Good evening. I'm sure you can hear me. I want to say thank you guys for coming here to this town hall for this important reason. Sorry. What I'd like to do is I'm going to sing a song, a blessed song for our community here. And then we're going to start calling on people, because what's happening here has such a huge impact all over the state of Washington. The youth need us, and we need the youth. And that song is a song that we use in the canoes when we're traveling, whether it's in calm waters or in rough waters, asking the Creator to bless us and watch over us and keep us safe, keep our community safe. Thank you. Thank you.
I've been asked just to give you guys a quick layout of the facility. So welcome to everybody. This is the Naselle Community Center. And after everybody's done speaking tonight, just let you know there's refreshments downstairs that people are welcome to come down and partake in. There's bathrooms downstairs. I've been asked to ask people to please silence your phones. If you've got young kids here, please keep them under control. And again, at this point, I think we're going to open it up for people to come up and speak. So anyway, welcome. Thank you for coming out.
So the first speaker I'd like to call on would be Jim Walsh, the representative that took his time to come down here to help us. Please welcome Jim Walsh.
Well, thanks, Hugh, and thanks everybody for showing up. I wish we were here with better news and a better occasion. As you all know, this has been a battle we've been fighting for years now. The youth camp's been in the sights of some of my colleagues in Olympia, and it's an ideological thing. It's a philosophical thing. They don't believe that juvenile facilities of any sort should exist. Their belief is that kids who've gotten in trouble, at-risk youth, should stay in their neighborhoods, stay in their homes, and that the approach should be one of counseling, psychological or other counseling, to help them get right with their behavior and what they've done. And I disagree with that. I think sometimes these kids who've gotten in trouble need to get out of the environment in which they got in trouble and have a change of scene, get away from people, even if it's family, to kind of see a new pattern. And the thing that the youth camp has done well, and I don't have to tell you what the numbers are are good. What the camp has done well is it gives these kids, hope. It gives these kids a view, a path to how they can live better and not get into a life of crime and a life of involvement in the justice system, how they can get right with themselves and with the community, with the world. So I want to help you fight for that good work. And we will continue to fight. Right now, the focus of our efforts are directed at the governor, as they should be. He has the ability to make this current version of the defund language go away, go out, and we can continue to have this debate as we've been having it for a few years. Even if he doesn't do that, frankly, using the emergency powers he has currently to do many things by proclamation, he could also, by proclamation, either slow the language in this budget item, and it is a budget item, a budget proviso. It is not law to shut down the camp. And a budget proviso only lasts as long as the budget it's written in. And this budget, where it was slipped in, and you all know the story by now, we had a bipartisan agreement to remove the defund language. And then my colleagues, who don't want any juvenile authorities anywhere, sneaked the language back in to the draft budget. This budget is a supplemental budget, so only lasts 1 year, really even less. So we can come back if we must, if we need to, at the next legislative session and pass law, which is above budgets, keeping the camp open and doing the work that it does. But that will be a battle too. The best point right now, the best focus is on the governor. And he and I have not always seen eye to eye. We usually don't. But this is a situation where the governor can be a good guy. This is a situation where the governor can do the right thing. And that's the narrative we should give the governor, that this is the right thing for him to do. And good for the state and good for the local community too, but mostly good for the kids, because this is the best path for these kids to get right. And we hope that he will do that. But be assured, if this doesn't work, we will continue the fight. We will put pressure on the governor to use a proclamation to slow the defunding, which he can do. And then we will revisit the issue again with legislation at the next session. But of course, the best thing would be for him to turn this around with a veto right now, because DCYF and the bureaucracy will begin the close down process if we let them, starting with this budget. So we will continue to put pressure on the governor. We will continue to put pressure on the bureaucrats at DCYF. We will continue to put pressure on my colleagues to see the value of the work that the youth camp does. And I believe in that value, and I'll continue to defend it in Olympia and everywhere they'll listen. So that's the state of play. That's where we are right now. I really encourage you to stay focused and don't let the negativity of some of the rhetoric that some of my colleagues use get to you. The work that the camp does is great work. Believe in it and fight for it, and I'll be fighting with you. Any questions? Do you want to take questions for a minute or two?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
If the boys have been placed here because of their actions, and the parents were not able guide them before it got so far that we had to come here. How is it going to work to keep the kids in their home? They weren't able to do it before. How are they going to be able to do it now?
Well, the short answer is they're not. And that's why we don't agree with that approach.
Where's your logic? That's what I'm saying.
It's a belief that correctional facilities are inherently unfair, that they are inherently racist, they are inherently bigoted. And I just don't believe that's true. I think that particularly when we're talking about juvenile facilities, this really is a chance for a young person to turn their lives around. Before they get into that life of prison revolving door type thing that we know is problematic. This is a path away from that. So what do they think? They think it because they're invested in an ideology that opposes all forms of correction. And that's just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. Ultimately, in the long play, that's what they believe.
Yeah, so at DCYF, we often talk about continuum of care. Yet with the closure of a minimum medium security facility like Naselle, there's a break in that continuum. If we're talking about having kids stay in communities, the other option is to go to max. So how do we reconcile that? Do you have any
maximum security of Green Hill or other facilities like that? Look, we want, if you're critical of juvenile rehabilitation, if you're critical of the juvenile hall system, you should want more Naselles and fewer Green Hills.
Yes.
I mean, you want the facility where the kid really believes that there is a better path. The trouble with the maximum security facilities, the institutions, is they do start to look and feel more like a prison. And the great thing about Naselle is it doesn't. And so it really is that chance for the kid to turn it around. So I can't, yes, the continuum is important, but even that argument is used against the likes of Naselle. So I don't even like that argument. I would prefer that we are making more Naselles and fewer Green Hills. But we're going the opposite direction, which is the underlying premise of the question. What they're doing with this Everybody Stays in Community is channeling at-risk kids into the least friendly, least hopeful environments, at least in my opinion.
What about Representative McIntyre?
Senator Wilson's right there.
Yeah, I'm right here. Perfect. I haven't heard much from the legislature except for you, sir.
Well, he's going to have his, but go ahead, Jeff. He's going to have his moment.
So we'll do this jointly because you have three of us, two representatives in the center, and
Can he ask you to do the mic?
You actually had to ask a senator to go to the mic. That doesn't happen.
You notice how fast the representative left the mic. Don't ever do that. Listen, here's how the story goes. As the Senate goes, we started our supplemental budget year. It's a little year. It's supposed to be an adjustment year. When we all know what happened in Olympia this supplemental budget season, we went on a spending spree. But as you know, you were not on the recipient end of spending anything. You were on the cut end. But I want you to know on the Senate side, it was not in there. In fact, when I purviewed the budgets before they would run over for the other side, there were, I believe there were some improvements set aside, and I was very comforted of that. It wasn't until this guy caught it. Now remember, you have the Senate over here and the House over here. We play with different budgets, and then we do the inter-office mail. And so on the House side, Representative Walsh discovered this, and you had championed along with Representative McIntyre to get rid of that nasty adjustment in the budget. Then comes along probably the most important meetings that gets the least attention, called conference committee meetings, when we agree to that. And inside there, those where the magic was removed again. So since that's happened, you could tell by my hairstyle, every one of my hairs is straight up pretty much. And we have done the following, whether it be a letter writing campaign, a phone call, whether we need to help protest. But as Representative Walsh said, we're here to talk about some options, but I also came down here because I wanted to hear you. It's not that I wasn't going to understand your emotions as you get up here, because I know this is a devastation topic per se. But I needed to hear it from you because we also have to not sell it, but we have to personify it. We have to go to Olympia and also represent for you your position. And it's a silly position because I too had the pleasure of being here last year. I saw the graduation. I got a chance to talk to people. Are you kidding me? So I have seen it. He has seen it. So we're firsthand people. And I want you to know when you're going to take that firsthand experience and put it into the work to represent you. But there is a session coming. If for some reason the governor cannot get that magic erasing pen during the veto process, we will in fact end the session. And this is the best part. We work both sides of the houses. We'll talk about companion bills, budget provisos. You'll get a double whammy from to fight for you on both sides. And that's something I wanted to assure you. It's representative or senator, we're here for you. And we'll hold mine. Go ahead.
Thank you. Here that Mr. Hunter is going to do everything in his power to make sure that we get choked out from kids and shut us down long before we can get to any of these other possible solutions.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. That's already started. I mean, look at the number of kids who are there right now.
And spread doom and gloom and had everybody walking out of those meetings with their heads down, answered 0 questions besides, I'm the one who chose it.
Well, he's taking flack for the governor.
Well,
I mean, that's what he's doing. He's saying, look at me, don't look over there. It's a political calculation. I mean, you guys know what Hunter, and Ross Hunter.
He denied it until I threatened to go after his emails. And then he started poking himself in the chest and said, no, I'm the one, don't look at my email. I mean, he's going to do what he can. So this is what I'd like to know from you guys. What can you do in rapid time to make sure that we still have our fair share of kids coming? I mean, it says not till it goes till 23. If
Right.
he does sign this, he's going to choke us out. He's going to have us shut down as soon as he possibly can. It's already started.
Right, it's already started and it's been going on. I mean, what can we do? We can shine a light more directly on Secretary Hunter. And if he wants to be the one who decided, we will make sure to give him attention, close scrutiny over what he's doing. Again, that's politics. That's kind of the small ball politics of diverting attention from one decision maker to another. Underlying all of it is the main ideological drive, which is doing this, and that is the opposition to the concept of juvenile justice. And so don't get too distracted in the distraction game between Hunter and the governor and the speaker and all the politicians. That's like a parlor trick. The important thing underneath is they want to get rid of this system, and Naselle is just the first casualty because they're going to press from here on elsewhere.
Yes, what about private funding? If there's like people giving in to private funding to keep the facility open longer, is that a possibility? No, or not?
To privately fund the facility. It would be difficult. I mean, it's not impossible. There are adult facilities that are privately run, of course. That's controversial for a whole different set of reasons. But it is possible. You would need a private contractor to take over running the camp. But then you're back to square one again, because DCYF currently would need to contract with the private company. And that would be unlikely or very difficult. Another thing we need to work on is getting JRA out of DCYF. Because if we had, no disrespect to DCYF, their mission isn't corrections. Their mission isn't rehabilitation. So to give them JRA and put them in charge of rehabilitation is like, I don't know, taking a 16-year-old kid who's learning to drive and put them in England where they drive on the wrong side. I mean, it's not what they do. It's not what they're used to. It's not what they're good at. Now, it's controversial, but really it shouldn't be. It's common sense. JRA should be in Department of Corrections because they are used to corrections and the concept of rehabilitation and how to do it and the value of it. I mean, it's no lie. DCYF is the starry-eyed people who believe no one ever does anything wrong, and if you just give them more money, that everything will be wonderful. And in corrections, it's a little more real-world focused and does want to rehabilitate people because it acknowledges there's a need for rehabilitation. At DCYF, they don't even acknowledge the need for rehabilitation. So, but that, again, that's a longer-term prospect. Move it over to corrections. I mean, I don't think this governor and his administration would ever do that. But, and again, with the emergency powers the governor's taken, he could do it like that. Normally, this would require legislation, but he's doing so much without legislation, he could do it by proclamation. So if he doesn't do the veto and get rid of the defund language in the current draft of the budget, then we need to put pressure on him to use his proclamation powers and do something like that. Move the department into another sub-department into another department, or just declare with a proclamation a hold on the target date of June 2023. I mean, he did that with the long-term care insurance deal, right? He just declared it was going to stop. Now, he actually can't do that legally, and we had to do a bill that said it. But he could do this because this all falls in his executive branch. I mean, DCYF is part of the executive branch of government, which is under the governor. So, like I said, there are cards we have left to play. Private funding, because it's a JRA facility, very difficult. You'd have to have that private contractor enter a contract currently with DCYF.
Yeah, I'm going to speak later, but I do have one question for you, not necessarily quick. I talked to the 35th district representative because I wanted to present the idea to him of reopening Mission Creek Youth Camp for an outdoor school rather than closing Naselle and opening it for
it's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Outdoor school. And the 35th district rep said he sent in 133 requests to the governor Inslee. All of them they ignored. My response was, we'll send 134 then. So my question to you is, do either of you have the governors here to veto, or has every request that you've made also been ignored?
Well, we have his ear more than some do, but it's not a friendly ear. Usually, we know he listens to what we say. That's why we're trying to move carefully here and simply show him the downside of continuing on the path he's on, and hope that working with allies who normally have a friendlier exchange with him, that will be what convinces him. All we can do is what we've done before: is say, Governor, if you continue down this path, it's going to lead bad places and you're going to have political blowback you don't want. Do the right thing.
I think that we can come upon that a little bit where, not to give you any, false hope, but last year we had a similar instance on a budget proviso over fishing, the Lower Columbia River and the Willapa fisheries, the gill netting buyback program. And we were able to put enough pressure on the governor, despite his not having a love affair with us or not. He still did the right thing, and he vetoed that last year. We kept the same kind of pressure on a lot of our tactics that we're going to use in this case in order to get that guy to whip out this weapon called a pen, because that's all it takes. And that's what we're asking him for. We're going to show the return on investment. We're going to show the need for the community. And then we're going to, if we have to, we start to show the silliness of, what do you mean an outdoor, camp compared to Mission Creek or whatnot? And But Jim had already said, Representative Walsh already said, the shift in Olympia on rehabilitation has been a very, very shocking story the last couple of years. It's been very little consequences. Don't arrest anybody. Don't create any new laws, and enable them to stay at home, which I said enabled, and that's a form of rehabilitation. That's not what I've learned and saw here through the work product. This was the professional way to do this. And I think that every student would be an excellent testifier of that for return on that. But that's the options that we're doing. Was a governor we got his ear? Of course we do. We do engage with him. We usually have a buffer or two. We kind of do that. It's like we can't touch each other, but we do converse. And that's what you needed to know. If nothing else, we're completely unified in this. Your district representatives, there's only one missing here tonight. This is exactly what we do. This is what you retained us to do. You voted us to do, and we're going to do it. We will not stop. We're very ferocious as far as conquering or dividing and conquering. If there's a meeting I need to go to haunt a public meeting, even if it's rulemaking, it's not legislative. We get the right to show up there and to ask the questions too. There's a lot of meetings to go to between now and then. And the best question, sir, you had brought it up too, and it was brought up by the lady back there, is how do we stop them from stopping the metering of sending students here too? That's something, the first step is what we can do to lay down in front of that to keep going a business as usual before immediately restricting, saying no more people are coming. Because we know what that will do. That's the switch.
And frankly, I'm not convinced that the outdoor camp for rich kids is really a viable option anyway. I mean, they're offering that. That's to like soften the blow, but I'm not sure that would ever really take off.
They got the $20 million funding, so they have some holes somewhere, and rather than close Naselle, I'd rather see them use that $20 million funding to create those 18 halftime jobs in healthcare.
Like I said, it's not the best ROI for your tax dollars.
We've got you, ma'am, over here. You've been waiting.
Okay, weird question. We've kind of gone over how we got here, how the legislative process worked. We know that management has a duty to inform and give information, but based on what Mr. Hunter said, and we heard it 3 times in one day, I'm the one that chose this. I guess I have a concern that is it possible that you strayed into lobbying rather than advising, and is that an ethics problem? And if so, what do we do about it?
Wow, the lobbying, and there's that personal agendas, and then don't get me wrong, this is politics. Mr. and Mrs. Ego are very large around a lot of these things, and people get into control patterns of it's my decision and my department. But really, is our deal is the complete opposite. Is it a community very much importance, but yet the work product? Come on, look what you're doing. It's above and beyond, and we know that in Olympia, we have actually heard legislation last year where they want to prescribe people just to go to outdoor schools. You can go get a prescription at a doctor now if you're not feeling right, and they'll write you a prescription to go to a park over here, county line, the beach. And that's not what we need, is that. I was looking for R&R. I was looking for the true return on investment correcting use.
And as far as all of that goes, where does the buck stop? I mean, Ross Hunter can point at his chest all he wants. The buck doesn't stop with him. Who's his boss? I mean, like I said, that is a political theater thing. That's not going to help us get to a solution. Talking about rehabilitation and the value of it will help us get to a better solution.
Ma'am and Ben. Oh, you go ahead, in the blue there.
The trend has been for less incarceration for youth. And we get that, and we get that Black Lives Matter and people not being arrested anymore and all. But this has been going on for 20 years with Vladimir Hunter and for 20 years. And it wasn't the trend 20 years ago. So what's up with these guys? Why are they acting like the Russians coming down here and trying to destroy our lives? We do good work, we've done good work, we've proven it over and over and over, even though they treat us like the redheaded stepchild. Give everybody else more funding, everybody else more vocational things. Cut us down, and that started 6 months ago, when they emptied us out, 20 kids in 3 weeks, and put them into group homes. And that was like last July and August. And I said at the time to the group home coordinator, what are you doing, trying to shut us down? And we've never been able to make up for it because it was in the middle of a pandemic. We went from 50 kids, close to 60, down to less than 30. And they did that on purpose. And they were planning this whole thing the whole time. What's up with this guy? Why is he after us like this? Does anybody?
Because Naselle is the first step. It's not that he's after you specifically, but you're first in the line. You're the first domino.
But they've been trying to get this medical leg open for 20 years. Oh. And I mean, it's just got it written all over it. They know the courts are going to start opening up, the pandemic come winding down, and then when the kids start coming back in, get us down as low as they can, shut us down as quickly as they can. Oh my, we got too many kids, we'll have to open up that point.
You ever drive on Interstate 5 through Tacoma? I mean, they like projects that take 20 years to do. I don't know what to say. But underneath it is the lack of trust and the lack of belief in juvenile rehabilitation.
This is true. The closure lacks a study on JRA institutions and the impact of sending them to maximum and versus the impact. It lacks a scientific study. I'm a master's student of public health with a community leadership focus and environmental scientist and biologist. Also in recovery in about 17 years. My life has been recovered. My old life is recovered into a new one, obviously. If there are no scientific studies, you could use it to at least get the governor to slow it so that one can be done. And maybe that scientific study will take 20 years,
yeah.
Who knows how long those scientists will take to do case studies to get the evidence at the budget. And actually it will show that it will cost more to rebuild places to send them rather than reusing, keep on using what we already have that is working.
That's
so,
good. I mean,
budgetary
yeah.
wise, I mean, ask for the science. It's a strong.
I'd rather have the veto, but if we don't get the veto, then we'll ask for the science.
Ask for the veto.
Right.
Or the slow, the science will show.
I agree. That's a good point.
And you'll get the veto.
All right.
Ma'am, you had a question?
I don't know.
Oh, is Naselle the only medium security in the whole state?
Currently, yes.
Yeah, you're the last.
So the ones that are not medium security who are not coming here, they're going elsewhere.
Right.
And what programs that Naselle offers do they also offer?
Well, they've stripped a couple of important programs out of Naselle. The firefighting thing was an important piece. Yeah.
Ma'am, there's no curriculum to compare to. Naselle is itself. It has its own curriculum, which has obviously yielded success. To send a youth into maximum and to ask if they have the same programs, you and I both know just to have a curriculum is one thing, but we're talking about staff and the environment, the setting, and the everything. And this is a community-based thing because listen, for a new politician. I don't even like politics. I didn't get into this till a few years ago. A facility that has come through the years and has transitioned like Naselle, there's no fence. That alone says huge amounts about your community. I mean, and when I drive by the streets of your driveways here to your houses, I don't see a whole lot of things as I'll shoot the first kid that escapes from the cell in my drive. No, this is a community that has been in the professional business of making a difference in youth's life. This is why it's more than a facility. It's more than a curriculum that you cannot compare to anybody else. That's its strength. And so when we get those yielded results and we show those success stories, we need to weaponize their own silly mentality on coddling crime and no structure and just let the kids work it out. Come on, everybody.
It's more like a family there.
Yes, so we will adjust that and we can weaponize that in session if we have to. We don't want to do this. The veto is our favorite. But if we have to debate from the floor or in committees, you're getting a little sampling right now of what we're going to do and have to do. We'll line up experts, panelists, try everything we can to get a hearing and let the good results speak for themselves.
And what's the return on the other facilities for the medians to come back into the legal system versus
Recidivism, it is, I don't have that, but Olympia's spent a lot of time the last couple of years not wanting to put anybody in any kind of incarceration to some extent. You can see that.
And historically, Naselle's recidivism numbers are better than Green Hill and other facilities.
Next question. We had somebody over here. Yes, ma'am.
So I got a list of the oversight board for Hunter. And I see that there's, it's an older list, unfortunately, it's maybe a year old or so. And some of those people aren't in office, but I did notice that there was at least 4 or 5 legislators that are on this oversight board. Are you working with any of them to try and make sure that we have kids coming to us in a fair, equal way that Echo Glen and Green Hill get? Because when I got on there and looked, it seemed to me in the last 6 months, Green Hill got about 40 of our kids that we normally would have been getting.
I'm not aware who the legislative members are on the Senate
It's
side.
an advisory.
It's an oversight board.
Yeah, I mean,
For the Black Bear.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of toothless. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure that's the best use of
I
time,
will
but
email you the list.
sure. I mean, I'll send them all an email,
I will
but
email
Sure.
it to you as well.
I mean, I think the direct pressure on the secretary is probably better than that. But
Well,
we'll try it all.
They're his boss. They're the oversight committee, you know, I mean, he's got to do some answering to them too. So pressure on all of them, I think.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Pressure on all. Okay.
I got a question. So, and then we'll probably have a few more questions, and then we'll move on to the other people that want to speak. So if he signs it, would we be able to file an injunction against him
Again, well,
or his administration? How feasible would that be?
it's possible. I mean, it's not usually something that works, but it's possible. You would someone would sue, claim that the language in the budget is improper or illegal or discriminatory or something, and then hope that the court would, the judge is the one who issues the injunction and would say something like, I'm not going to rule on this finally, but that doesn't pass the smell test. For the time being, I'm going to halt this process. It's kind of a long shot, but it could work. It could work. All right.
Yeah.
Any more questions? One more question.
Well, we'll be here too. I want to hear from you guys, so I'll definitely step away from the mic and we'll be here if you need it.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Next up, Rudi.
Thank you, Rudi. Boy, I wish I could speak that well. I'm Rudi Rudolph. I've taught the Naselle Youth Camp 27 years, and this is my 5th time fighting this fight. And I'm also president of the Rays River Valley Education Association. We can win this fight. We've won it 4 other times. This time around, social media is so much more. So keep posting on social media to save the Naselle Youth Camp.
Fight like Ukrainians.
Keep signs in your cars. Keep calling the governor. Call more than once. Tell him to use his line item veto and do the right thing. We're recording this town hall, and I want you guys to like it when you see it on social media, and hopefully it will make its way up to Seattle. I also want you guys to know that Ross Hunter and DCYF and the 6 members of that budget committee are hurting kids and families in Naselle. Residents at the youth camp are worried about being sent to maximum security Green Hill, and we've had an uptick of discipline at the camp. DCYF is hurting Naselle public school kids who are worried about losing their teachers and their friends when their families move. Students whose parents who work at Naselle are worried for their families too. They're worried about another business closing here in town. There's 3 right by the public school already. This will be the 4th. And the idea of talking to the oversight committee for Ross is a good idea. We were pretty happy, for about 2 days when we heard that the Senate and the House was going to save the camp. And it was just crazy that all of a sudden some committee decided to put us on the chopping block again. And the lead on that committee is Tim Ormsby, a buddy of Ross Hunter, head of DCYF, who wrote the closure of NYC and ordered JRA to stop sending students immediately. So why does Tim Ormsby want Naselle Youth Camp to close and 100 workers from 4 different unions to lose their jobs? It's not about saving money. Ross Hunter said it's not cost savings, but it's consolidation. The only reason why I think that Tim Ormsby wants to wants NYC gone is that so when incarcerated youth populations increase, some of those residents will go into private prisons for profit, like Medical Lake, run by non-union workers and without extensive programming other state institutions provide. Tim and Ross have been planning this prior to September. We heard from OSPI that we were going to close in September, and we told them, no, we're not closing. They're hiring here at Naselle. But they've led a series of changes here at the camp, which have hurt us. Even though we were down because of COVID and the courts not prosecuting crime. First, JR has filled Naselle at 60% capacity versus 80 compared to Green Hill and Echo. Then JR didn't send us the older kids. DNR asked over and over again, we want older kids so we can have them work for us. Instead, those older kids are stuck in Green Hill and there's very few jobs for them. In our heyday, we had 85% of our kids working. Third, DCYF overstaffed NYC. We hired all these people right in October, and they knew they were going to close us. So it makes us look more expensive than we were. And then finally, DCYF isn't being truthful about the long-term needs for beds. DOC beds beds are filling up with DOC kids. These are the older JR25 kids. So at the group homes, they're filling up there. Green Hill already is half full with DOC kids. These older kids with longer sentences will need to create more beds in the future. And that, unfortunately, right now looks like it may be a future without Naselle. And hence the need for beds near Rep. Tim Ormsby Town and Medical Lake. So I suggest we continue to call the governor's office, tell Jay Inslee he could be a hero this time and save NYC. NYC is an award-winning solution to crime we are facing in this state by rehabilitating youth and educating them. Okay, the Democrats are going to lose Southwest Washington elections without supporting it, Naselle Youth Camp. Don't send union jobs to the north or the east. Keep them here in Naselle. Tell the governor to send more youth to Naselle to learn to fight fires and help with the effects of climate change. Thank you.
All right, Jessica. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Mason, and unlike so many of my fellow colleagues in this room, I have only been back at Naselle Youth Camp for 1 month. And on my first day here, I was told, hey, guess what? We're on the chopping block. And then a couple days later, it was, oh, no, wait, never mind. We're not on the chopping block. And then, oh, explicative, we're back on the chopping block. I feel like it was a church. I probably shouldn't swear. So I've been, I love working with youth. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to talk about money. I'm going to talk about the heartstrings, because I think as important as the politics and the facts and the legislation in the Senate and all that stuff that I really don't know, completely understand all of that stuff. I think we need to go back to the center of it, which I think is where most of our minds are, is right at the heart of the matter. I've worked with at-risk youth for 15 years plus, actually. I started volunteering with a program that helped prevent alcohol and risk-related trauma in youth. I worked with at-risk youth. Basically, what we did was we taught them that their choices, they have the right to make whatever choice they're going to make, but there are consequences for every choice. We didn't bulldoze, we didn't preach. And that's what I loved about it. And that's what I love about Naselle. I was working for Naselle through a contract from a nonprofit, through the My Job program, the My Journey Out Beyond program that some of you may remember or be familiar with. I had the privilege of working with the wonderful Mrs. Victoria Nanny, and she taught me all she knows about working with these youth, and made it easier on me to learn those things. Now, when I first started at this nonprofit, however, I was in marketing and communications. I was invited to the graduation of the Manufacturing Academy. And the Manufacturing Academy is very special, and the youth have to work hard to get into that. I've had the privilege of helping youth get there. But when I first started, I was invited to the graduation, and I was blown away. I realized at that moment, I don't want to take pictures of these kids and just document their success. I want to be one of the people that's there helping them change their lives and transform their minds so that they can do something better. I've heard awesome stories from Naselle. I've witnessed awesome stories from Naselle. And when I finally got into this work, it was life-changing. I felt a new energy for work that I haven't felt since I volunteered. And hey, now I got paid for it. That's cool. That works for me. Great benefits, all that stuff. But I also thrived personally. My younger brother, he was our at-risk youth in our family. And he had addiction issues, mental issues. He had tussles with the law. Unfortunately, he committed suicide. And unfortunately, I see a lot of young men who remind me so much of my little brother that it makes me work even harder to bring them back into the fold, turn them around, believe in them. Because that's what everybody at Naselle does. We all have a mutual purpose. Coming back to Naselle via the Naselle School District was the best thing that could have happened to me, because I got to be back in their lives because they have a future. So many people don't understand these youth have made mistakes, but you know what? They have a future, and it can be bright if someone stops for 5 minutes and believes in them. So unfortunately, the contract with My Job ended, and I was out of a job. So I thought, well, maybe I need to take a break from kids for a while. I worked at Home Depot at the customer service desk. During the interview, someone said, how do you think you can handle rude customers? I said, I work with incarcerated youth. Try me, you know? It was perfect. I also worked to take escort foster kids to court-appointed visits with their parents. The only problem with both of those jobs is it wasn't where my heart was. I left it in Naselle. And I finally got to come back. It's my dream job. So let us keep it. Woo! Yeah. You know, I sat through all 3 of those meetings with in your words, Vladimir Hunter. And I'm trying to keep it positive, so I'm not gonna throw too many punches. But the fact that he sat there and said that he would not support keeping us open, that was like a smack in the face. He had the temerity, I'll put it in appropriate words, to say that. And that, it really galls me because he doesn't get it. He's obviously never worked a day with youth. He's a bureaucrat. I don't have any use for that. I don't have any use for the politics of it. Just let us go in and do our damn jobs and take care of the kids. That's all we want. And I got another thing for those who, every time they tell us, we're not closing because of money. Hey, we don't work here because of the money either. I made $2 an hour more at Home Depot. I made double escorting foster kids. But where was my heart? At the lowest paying job because it has the most emotional, mental rewards to change a life. That's why I'm still here. That's why I'm fighting. I hope you all will keep fighting with me. It's a pleasure working with all of you, and I hope that we get to be a part of the Naselle community for a long time to come. Thank you.
All right, that was really great stories there. Taking care of the youth, that's why I'm there. I know where those youth are right now because I've been there myself. Next speaker, Lisa Nelson, please.
Well, whoever signed me up is gonna be in a lot of trouble.
I did sign you up in pencil.
Oh, you did? Well, I am gonna use my executive power then. Well, it's, I started here. I didn't plan anything, so you were going down, mister. The president of the union is just met his match. Well, first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lisa Nelson, the school district superintendent. And I started here in 2008 and came back to my alma mater, which was not the Naselle Youth Camp per se, but Naselle High School. And started here in July. In December, we were having one of these meetings, this one I think was at the public school. We had some out at the youth facility. And I had just gotten back to my alma mater after 16 years working at Ocean Beach School District. And my heart sank because, I finally got to my alma mater. It's where I wanted to finish out my career, Naselle School District, and then boom, here we are. So one of the speakers said it before, I think this is the third or fourth time where it's really been kind of serious at the last minute. Like many others who graduate, they can't wait to get out of here. I'm graduating this podunk town and I am never coming back. Well, and like so many others, I came back, because this is where I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to work. This is the community I grew up in. This is where my family is, and this is where the people I love. And it's just, Naselle is just, it really personifies the word community. Like you said, how many people, how many citizens, how many towns are receptive to the idea of a prison in their backyard? Constantly hearing, not in my backyard, not in my backyard. And to quote one of our teachers that we have, he's since retired, but he said, you've taken away the fish in the trees, give us the criminals, please. And, I thought that was kind of quaint, but, the people here are special and we do embrace that kind of work. And we give the kids a loving home and a loving adult that works with them. And
No, they're not easy. They are difficult kids. But, you know, there's reasons that we don't have very many kids who run away or very many kids who don't want to be there. And there's a reason that the facility is not fenced. That's because they don't want to go. They're getting health care, medical care, they're getting jobs, they're getting schooling. They have multiple opportunities to work on campus. Prior to the massive attrition that you talked about, they had opportunities to go out on DNR and plant trees, fight fires, make lunches, clean the local cemeteries. I mean, the kids and the programs have done a ton of work. This youth camp is as old as I am. And it's just, I mean, it's just a shame. It just, you know, like I said, keeping it appropriate. It's a gut punch, you know, not only for the students we serve, but all the people at the youth camp. I think they said there were, the other day, it was 93 employees. I mean, you take 100 jobs out of the school and you combine, you know, with the school district and the changes that we're going to go through, then you lose the, you know, the kids whose parents work at the school, you know, they will have to move. Pacific County is already a repressed area. We share our school district boundary with parts of Wahkiakum County, which I believe is number 1 or 2 when it comes to poverty level. I mean, this is just a shame. There, you know, we have 1 grocery store, we have 1 restaurant / bar, we have 1 mini mart gas station. And we have the camp and the school, and there's some, you know, county and city jobs, but you're just like basically eradicating a huge portion of our lives in our community. And I guess I'm not really providing any inspiring words other than, so if you call on me for inspiration, I'm sorry. But, you know, make the phone calls, send the emails. Your idea about an injunction is interesting. I do have a question now. So I've heard different things about when what's the deadline for the governor to sign? I've heard conflicting reports, or how much longer?
Not a lot longer. I think it's next week or so. It's about 5 days more.
Okay. And could the proclamation powers still apply after that time? As far as, you know, we talked about line item veto. I assume that had to be before the budget.
He doesn't have a line item, so careful about that.
Okay.
But the good thing is the language that you find is its own section, and he does have section veto power. It's a technical matter. To be precise, it's a section
okay
that we want. As the proclamations, I mean, he's making it up as he goes along with the proclamations, so you could proclaim just about anything. So if it doesn't veto, then now we'll ask him to use a proclamation to slow down this process.
Which can occur after that April timeline of which he would sign the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Because as you know, superintendent at the school, we've, you know, there's been a lot of proclamations that we've had to work through. So I understand that if it can do something for the school in one way or another, it should be able to do something for NYC. But I do want to thank you for coming. I've worked with most all of you in one form or another. I know there's some newer employees at the camp I haven't directly worked with, but keep up the good fight. I've seen it, the camp from the inside out. Way back in the 80s, I worked there for a short time before I went on to get my teaching credential. And then so I had the opportunity to work there then. And then also at the school as a school principal there for 4 or 5 years. And now as a superintendent, obviously still work with the school, but I'm really proud of the work you do and the partnership that we have. I mean, between DNR, the school, and the JR side, now DCYF, I guess. I mean, I just feel like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's what I have to say.
Value, how it's going to affect your school district? Or do you know that right now?
I do know that. Well, I know some of that. Okay, what I can address right off the bat, because I was just talking with a reporter about this the other day. The youth camp this current year, the school side generates $1.6 million. So now, and that's just for that program. And there are reasons why, we generate extra funding. Okay, there are some students there who struggle academically, so we were able to go out and pursue grants for that. There were some equipment upgrades we needed to add to the vocational program, so there was money for that. So this year is exceptional in terms of funding. But look at all the things we're going to be able to do, or we thought we were, we're planning to do. We're not giving up, but so there's that part of it. Then the funding for students at the youth facility is about $24,000 per resident. Now, about 3,000 of that 24,000 goes to the public school because that's where we do, the hiring, all the personnel, the HR, the payroll, accounts payable, and so forth. So, 24,000 times however many kids. So it generates a lot of revenue. And so not only do the youth camp kids benefit from that, but there is a small, what we call indirect, that then also would benefit the students at the public school. So, that funding allows us to hire, extra teachers. We always have good computers. We're getting a bunch of new welding equipment. So then I guess on the flip side of this, the other funding part of the equation is, so a public school student generates on average about $14,000. And that's because the public school is funded differently than the camp. The camp is kind of one rate, but the public school gets enhancement if a student, for example, might qualify for special education, they're in vocational programs, struggling reader, in the highly capable program. So, I don't want to bore you with all the details, and I'm sure I am, because even I do it for a living and it can be boring at times, that part of it.
So the closure of the camp would have an effect on your school?
Yes, that's to cut to the chase. But you asked about if I had an idea about the money amount.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's long-ended.
All right, Victoria, Nanny, you're up.
I actually didn't know that I was signing up to speak. I thought I was signing up on a petition. So I signed my name. So I've been working at the youth camp since 1987. I say I retired in 2017, but honestly, I was medically separated, and I can prove that with about 2.25 meters of titanium in my back. Thank you, Naselle Youth Camp. I just wanted to, say a couple of things. One is we do not work with at-risk youth. There are no at-risk youth at the youth camp. These are at-risk to others youth. I think Echo Glen does a great job. I visited. I think Green Hill does a phenomenal job. I visited and I've worked there as a contractor in the units and in the school. And none of these kids that get to this level are at risk. And it was very offensive for Mr. Hunter to keep saying that over and over again. These are not at-risk youth. And yes, some children absolutely do better when they're closer to their communities. If you're talking about at-risk youth. If you're 16 and you've got 12 misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors and 4 felonies on your record, those are the guys that we see. We rarely see the student who comes in and that's their only felony. That's murder, that's rape of a child in the 1st degree. Those are some pretty horrific, So that's the one thing. We don't work with at-risk youth. And the research that they quote is not about the age or sophistication of criminality that our kids have. So that's just a couple of things that I want to say. So as we're petitioning the governor, just maybe throw some of that out. These kids do not do well in the community. We had 2 students leave, and I think in the last 3 weeks, to group homes. They're chosen, they're The headquarters people choose these guys. Youth camp has no say in it, kind of. Both of them are back. One of them just left a few days ago. And he came back and they said he will never come back to this group home. He will spend the rest of his sentence at Naselle Youth Camp. So not all students do well in the community either. And then lastly, because I've been there a long time and I want to say something positive. Back when I was Miss Matlock, I had a student on my caseload, Joey, and Joey got out. And then 23 years later, he comes back. By that time, I'm Mrs. Nanny. And nobody knew a Mrs. Nanny. So when this guy's down at the gate, he's saying, hey, I want to talk to Victoria Matlock. I was on her caseload. Thank you, Cary, for being there, because he was the only one who knew I was Miss Matlock. So Joey came and I drove out of camp and met him on the other side of the gate. And he brought his girlfriend at the time. And she's like, oh, I've heard so much about you. And he told me about what Naselle Youth Camp did for him. Some people who've been around know who I'm talking about. This kid was given a joint for his 3rd birthday from his mother, and he remembered that. It was like a family story. When he got released from the youth camp the first time, his dad picked him up and took him home with an 1/8 of weed and a 6-pack of beer. And he was back in like 2 months, and then he went on my caseload. So he comes back and he tells me that he got out, was in and out of prison for about 9.5 years. And then he flipped that switch. He was working at the time on the floating bridge construction project in Seattle as a carpenter, journeyman union carpenter. He had 2 daughters who at the time were like in 2nd and 3rd grade. He said they have never seen anything but a sober father. His father was only allowed in his life because he got sober. And he said that his girls have never seen anything other than a sober grandpa. They have no grandma. She made a different choice. So 22 years later, this 48-year-old man comes in, and says, this is what you did for me. And at being at the school, I'm the registrar at the school now, my 3rd job at camp. I get calls so frequently from kids saying, I need my GED copy. I'm going to college. I need a copy of my high school diploma. I'm applying for college. And then I say something effective. How you doing? Who's your counselor? You mind if I tell people what you're doing and how you're doing? Because we never get to hear that. And it's out there. So we do really, really good work. And just as a reminder, we don't work with at-risk youth.
Thank you. Mike White.
Thank you, Mike Yustramski. So I'm the president of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We represent most of the employees at Naselle Youth Camp. I'm also a social worker, and that's something a little bit more near and dear to my heart. I've worked through most of my professional career with houseless individuals in mental health systems, in correctional facilities. And in every one of these cases, as I'm going through the chart notes, as I'm going through, interviews, I think how many times, how many chances, if we had just gotten to them sooner, right? If we had just gotten to them as kids, as juveniles, before they got into that cycle, what would be different? What could be different? And I look at the work that all of you have done, and I think you're an example of what could be different, right? Because you've done it, you've shown it. It's not about rhetoric. It's not about politics. It's not about D. It's not about R. It's not about money. It's about the work that you do in your heart, the work that you do for these kids, for this community. I kind of struggled on if I wanted to share this, but I'm going to, because whatever. The other thing that I'm going to share is not at Naselle, but I was one of those kids, okay? I came up, Maryland, I can talk about that for hours, but coming up, didn't always necessarily have the people who could show me how to make the right choices, right? Who could show me that there was a different future than what I had seen from others. And then I was fortunate that I had people like you all, who were able to come into my life and who were able to say like, hey, you do have options. You can be something. You don't have to go down this path. You don't have to do what I used to call life on the installment plan in prison, right? You don't have to end up in the ground. I can tell you there's a lot of people that I came up with that's what's happening. They're not with us anymore, and I'm not that old, okay? Because of interventions like this, again, because of the work that you do. The success stories, you see them up here again. We could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all of the things that all of you have done and continue to do. That's the other thing that's amazing. Despite this meteor coming for all of you right now, right? Everybody still showed up to work today. You're going back to work later, right? Like people are still dedicated to their craft, despite the fact that someone else had said, you're not really paid what you're worth, right? Overworked, underpaid, all of that kind of stuff. But you do it because you, I guess, like I said, you give a darn, I'll say that. You do it because you care. And I truly believe that events like this, events like happened last week, as we continue to speak, as we continue to call the governor, he will do the right thing. I want to believe that, and I'm going to believe that. And I'm going to continue to be positive and say that people brought positivity into my life, and look at where I'm at. Again, president of the statewide union, master's degree, social worker, right? I'm doing all right. I think I would be a success story. And we have that opportunity to continue to do that. Going in this other direction, going with this closure, as DCOIF has talked about, if we don't veto it, this is going to have a devastating effect on the youth in our state for generations, for years. We can't let that happen. And we can't let this turn into, again, a partisan divide, or even, again, a money divide, or anything like that. Again, it comes down to a fundamental question, which is, do you care? Do you actually care about the kids, about the youth in our state? Do you really believe that folks have an opportunity, that we believe in the American dream, that when folks are given opportunities, when folks are given the ability to make choices, that they can be successful? Because if you do believe that, and I assume you do, because that's why you're here, then I want you to join, again, all of us, and continue to put pressure on the governor. And again, just continue to say, do the right thing. Do the right thing. In your heart, we all know what the right thing is. Stop the noise, stop the money, stop the partisan, all that doesn't help any of us. What helps is focusing on the kids that are there now, the kids that have come out of there, the kids that may be coming there in the future. They need all of you, and they need all of you to continue to be focused on that. And I won't ramble, because I can ramble, those who have seen me. So I'm just going to say with that, I want to thank all of you again for being here. I want to thank all of you again for the work and the activism that you have been doing to keep this open, that you will continue to do. I know you all will continue to do it. And then I'm going to close with, my promise to you right now is, as long as there is an ounce of life left in this camp, I'm going to be doing CPR. I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep fighting. And I need all of you to fight with me. Thank you.
Justin.
Well, good evening. I'll just start out by saying I'm not going to say anything that you guys don't already know, but I did want to first just take a second to recognize and acknowledge and commend all the amazing employees, past and present, that are here, and all the great work and success that you guys have accomplished over the years. So let's recognize that. So again, I'm Justin Laine, currently the principal at Naselle. Before being the principal for 20 years, I was a school counselor, and really what I've always wanted to do is work with, and I apologize, Victoria, but work with at-risk youth. That's what my heart was. So I've got a mental health degree and I've done some social work. And so I guess what I want to start off by saying is that my concerns about this far transcend the obvious and the potentially devastating impact that this will have in our community and on all the families at the present time that are concerned and worried about their livelihoods and their futures. So it's about the youth. And the other thing that we can't argue is obviously there are fewer kids ending up in these JRA facilities. I mean, we can't argue that and debate that. But the reality is, and you guys all know this, is there's absolutely no diminished need. There are kids in every single community in the state, including our own community, that desperately need the education, the counseling services, the treatment, the vocational training that they receive in Naselle and in the other JRA facilities. And that's just the reality. And for whatever reason, they're not getting here. And so I think that's my biggest concern is that, those kids are going to be underserved or not served at all. The other kind of fallacy in their thinking is this notion that these community-based interventions are going to be more effective for the youth. And the reality is that in virtually every case, those community-based interventions have already been tried, in many cases, multiple times, and they haven't worked for whatever reason. Some cases, these kids and their families can't navigate those complex systems. In some cases, those systems are already overwhelmed. But the reality is that those community-based interventions haven't worked and they're not going to work for these youth. And that's also a big kind of shortcoming with their philosophy right now. And then the other thing that I want to point out is that we know that there are outcomes at Naselle, education, treatment, and otherwise, and programs that are unique to Naselle. And those outcomes and those services aren't going to be replicated in other places. We're not too far removed from the head of JRA, or I don't know what Mr. Clayton's role was, but they talked about the youth camp being the flagship, kind of program within the JRA and having unparalleled success, and how they can't eliminate, a medium security facility that's an essential part of their continuum of care. And that need still exists. And I just think the potential closure of this, it does a tremendous disservice to the youth that don't get the services that they get in Naselle, and they won't get the same quality of service elsewhere. It's a disservice to their families who are desperate for their kids to get these services. It's a disservice to the communities whose safety will be compromised or continue to be compromised in the entire state. And I did some transition work out there years ago. And so what I would do is I would, research all the different resources and services that were available in the communities. And then I would excitedly contact the parents and say, hey, you can access this service, and the parents' response would be, well, we already tried that twice or 3 times. I'd say, well, you can access this service. Well, we already tried that twice. You can access this. Well, their brother tried that and that didn't work. But the reality is that these families aren't able to access. Sometimes they're not able to navigate those systems. And I know when I talked to Ross Hunter last week and I kind of shared that perspective with him, his response was to kind of acknowledge the need, but then say, do you really think that these kids have to be incarcerated to get that service? And that kind of reflects that inherent belief they have that this is, inhumane or whatever it is for these kids. And the reality for those kids is they won't get the service unless they're forced to or required to. So there are flaws in the system right now. These kids that need this aren't getting here. That's the problem, but there's absolutely no diminished need. And the shame in it is that DCYF is the very agency that's charged with protecting our most vulnerable youth. And they're failing to do that with this closure. They're failing to protect, the families in these communities. And those are my biggest concerns. And so I know I'm not saying anything that you guys don't already know, but I'm still hopeful that people that have some, opportunity to change this will listen and realize that they're doing a tremendous disservice, again, to the youth, to the families, the communities, and the entire state. So before I take off here, I know I've got a gentleman that didn't sign up that very much would like to speak, so I'll call him up here, and his name's Daral. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm a prime example of what goes wrong with people. You don't have these kind of programs. It's youth. I'm 50 years old. I've been in and out of the system since I was 12 years old. And if someone would have had the I'd have had that kind of system instead of sent to maximum security and fined for my very life in existence. I'm in recovery. I have 3 things I care about most in the world. Catching at the bud, homelessness, and people coming out of prison who have been institutionalized, like myself. I've been out of prison now for 3 years coming up. And I know that the children do need this kind of program. If I had that kind of program when I was young, I probably would not have been here now, speaking these words. And I know I don't have a very good name in this community. My family lived right there at 13 Youth Camp Laine for 8 years. I was there when people would walk off. My stepbrother got killed over here in Graysbury. And all I got to say is, from the human side, the bureaucrats really don't know what it's like to be out here like this. You know, we say it's choice, it's disease, the addictions, it's a cause. We can stop it when we're young. The children need to be safe, brought up in a proper way, and helped along the way. I'm 50 years old now. I've just now signed up for college. I have no clue. I had no life skills whatsoever. I had a stroke last year due to my addiction probably, and my alcoholism, and my homelessness. But I'm beg the governor, don't do this, man. Don't shut this place down. The kids really do need this. I just want your kids to be like me, 50 years old, struggling through life, trying to get it right. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Oh, powerful. That's what we want. That's what we need. Rudy, you have a song that.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna try to do a song from Dave King, a teacher from the youth camp. He's working tonight, so he wasn't able to come, but he recorded the song this afternoon, and he did a good job on it. Got the lyrics, and you'll actually hear 2 voices of Tim twice. So hopefully this technology will all work.
Doesn't he never showed, not knowing the road he's on. He gets so deep in, life is all but sin, thinking his life is all but done. And he says, help me, I'm too young to have the strife. I deserve a happy life. I'm too young to be this old. Help me get away from hate and greed. Help me turn a brand new leaf. I'm too young to be this old. Some friends are still around, some resting in the ground. There's gotta be a better way to go. Sometimes you need a break, buckle down and change your face. So listen to the kids and they say, help me, I'm too young to have the strife. I deserve a happy life. I'm too young to be this old. So help me get away from hate and greed. Help me turn a brand new leaf. I'm too young to be this old. Enter Naselle Youth Camp, a beacon in their life. A time out from the hatred, a time out from the strife. Enter Naselle Youth Camp, a better way to go. Give our kids a safe place so they don't have to say, help me, I'm too young to have a strife. I deserve a happy life. I'm too young to be this old. Help me get away from the hatred. Help me turn it randomly. I'm too young to be this old.
Thank you. Barb, are you here still? Okay, thank you. Doris. Is Doris here, or did she leave? She left. Okay. AJ Smith. Come on up.
I'm not very good at this, and everybody kind of stole my thunder already, what I wrote down.
You can sing.
No, I can't. I've been in this district 9 years, and I started at the youth camp as a teacher. I worked there for 6 years, and then I got called up to go to the regular high school. At one time, I was educational advocate there, so I was the ones calling the kids when they got out and see how they were doing. Started a basketball program out there for the kids. I can go on and on and on what the youth camp offers. The youth camp offers ART, DBT, they offer all these skills, and it's a great place. And here it is from my higher ups in my union, the teachers union. They always want to talk about that school to prison pipeline. That's what they always talk about. And the thing about it, if they don't fix it locally, that pipeline is still going to exist. And at Naselle, we are at the end of that pipeline, and we catch those kids and try to help them. They come from an environment. They are a product of their environment. They no structure, no discipline, no work ethic. They don't get taught that because a lot of times, and it's sad to say, they don't have the parents to teach them that. And a lot of them come from broken homes. And at the youth camp, we give them that. We give them that structure. We give them that work ethic. We give them a time of day to open up to us, at least when I was there, and I haven't been there in 3 years, so things could have changed. But if the youth camp closes down and these kids continue to go, these minimum security kids go to Green Hill, it's going to be the same thing as when they were on the outs. That's what they called it, on the outs. And if they go to Green Hill, they're going to be a product of their environment. And there's a big difference between Green Hill kids. They're great kids. They're trying their best, but they're older, more hardened, more serious criminal. They've committed more serious crimes. They are going to go downhill, where we have a chance at the end of that pipeline to catch those minimum medium security kids and make a difference in their life. They're not going to have any more, or it's going to be the number is going to be a lot less that make it. And this just shows you, and I tell this story, I told this story in front of, because I said this same speech in front of 5,000 teachers at our union meeting, and I got booed at first, and then they kind of opened up to the idea. I probably should have never spoke of that thing, but anyway, I said, we need to give these kids every opportunity to succeed. I don't care if it's publicly funded. I don't care if it's privately funded. We just need to help them. And we do that at the youth camp. And for example, I've had this kid probably been in 100 fights in his life, gang member, the whole works. I kept him after class. And at that time we taught till about 9:30 at night. I was with him until 11 o'clock with a security guard, not alone, helping him fill out his FAFSA and stuff to get him to college. He comes up to me and he's crying, and he's coming up to me kind of quickly, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Is he gonna hit me or something? And he gave me a hug, and he goes, "You're a real G, Mr. Smith. No one's ever helped me like that." And well, that was my first year, and I didn't know really what a G was, but I'm just an overweight, fat white kid that went to school here, so I didn't know what that meant. But I thought that was really cool, and that's the things we do out there. We make changes. We teach them skills. We teach them discipline. We teach them a work ethic. And if you close this place, if this place does get closed down, these kids, the 80 kids that used to be there, the 120 when I started there, they're gonna have a less chance of surviving. And that kid that I'm talking about that called me a real G, he changed his life around, got out of the gang life, went back to where he was from, product of his surroundings, got back, was going to college and got killed. All right. Those stories happen all the time. And if you close a place like this, it's just going to skyrocket, I believe. And so what I can say is I grew up in a kind of political family, not so much in, you know, like Mr. Walsh does or Mr. Wilson does, but fish politics. And my dad always told me, you're not a D or an R when it comes to helping us out. And I asked Mr. Walsh and Mr. Wilson to not be a D and R here. And I won't say what my dad says he is, but to cross those party lines and get full support, because to this community, the kids are always first, but then the community comes. And when we lose jobs, and the school loses money and loses jobs, and we're just going to continue down a path that we don't want to go. So I asked Representative and Senator Wilson, correct? Okay. I know Walsh. I talk to him all the time. But I ask you guys, let's not make it a DNR thing. Let's just make it, we're fighting for something together. And if you can get support from the other side, that would be great. And sorry, I'm rambling now. Thank you, and I hope the youth camp is safe.
All right, Rod, our final speaker.
My name's Rod Leffer. I teach mathematics at the Naselle Youth Camp, and right now I'm wondering if I should suck in my gut or not. AJ, get some exercise, friend. You're a few years, you'll double this. I have a lot of complaints, which range from the open session process where the youth camp was funded to the behind closed doors session where the funding was taken away, to the process of closing the camp before they have a plan. They plan on getting a project manager to come up with a plan after they've already made the decision, to the complaint of turning residents over to a person who was investigated last year for not providing services to foster children in the DCYF. Ross Hunter was investigated by King 5 for not providing services, and then having him stand up in front of the youth camp and saying that he's going to provide services to residents who are scattered throughout the state, which in a best case scenario is wishful thinking to me. In a worst case scenario is a bald-faced lie to get drug treatment, psychological help, sex offender treatment, special education services to these residents who are scattered throughout the state, I think is going to be an impossible task. But what I'd like to do tonight is focus a comment on something that I think everybody in the camp feels in their gut. Excuse me, I didn't think I was going to get this emotional. It's going to take me a minute. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's poor public speaking. But the residents, when they come into our camp, they see the worst part of humanity. They see the abuse. They see the neglect. They see the violence. They see the hatred that one person could feel for another because of a color or a number or a gang sign. When they come into the camp, They see caring, they see compassion, they see the respect people can have for one another. And if they don't see that, they're not going to learn it. And the residents that come into our camp, I don't think they see it at Green Hill. I think at Echo Glen, they see it, but they're too young to learn it, to absorb it. And at Naselle Youth Camp, they're the right age. They're in the right environment to see that. And that's where the transformation takes place. And I think everybody in this room knows that, but I just, with your permission, wanted to kind of voice that opinion. Thanks.
So I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I thought after listening to this, I thought it would. Some of you probably know who I am, some don't. I'm County Commissioner from the County, Gene Strong. I served 40 years in law enforcement, and I have a poor track record retiring. I keep going back to work. But spending 40 years in law enforcement, I was the one to send some of these kids here. And I've always, the majority of my time has been spent working right in this area. I love this camp. I really appreciate the people that work there. But the one thing I want to say tonight is that, from mine as a county commissioner and quite a few people in here, quite a few people who work at the camp, live in my county. The other two commissioners I work with, we are committed to supporting and doing what we can to ensure that this camp stays open. Friends with Jim, Mr. Wilson. We aren't long friends yet, but we'll get there. But we want to say that we are going to work for you. We're going to do what we can. We will be working with your representatives and senators, sending letters, support, and doing what we can. And I really appreciate the work you do and everything. And like I said, and my number is in the book. If you want to call me or talk to me, you need something, a letter sent or something, let me know. We will be there for you. And thank you for the work you're doing. And thank you guys for the time tonight.
So, there are people in this room that would love to speak and they can't speak because of the higher up, but one of them is going to step up and speak.
Broad and have a hard time getting through this. Spent a lot of years here, living here, and my dad was stationed here. I'm currently among the associate superintendent of Naselle. I'll get through this, I promise. Was stationed here from 1961 to 65, coming out from Jacksonville, Florida. I've been here for almost 27 years now, and have held many positions at the years. I want to recognize a couple people or a bunch of people that I see in the audience. Nanny, Victoria Matlock, my supervisor for 10 years. Troy Wasworth, the head RN. Marty Cole, our chaplain for many years. Jim Moten. I mean, there's people that go on and on. Michael Stoffelsson, Jamie Kincaid, Travis Boggs. There's people that bleed Naselle, and it's a community. And I probably shouldn't be speaking tonight based on my role, but my role here is as a community member. Troy Wasworth, I said you already. One of my friends for years, Sharon Wolf. I see faces all through the crowd that believe in what we do. I believe in the kids that are here. This is a hard pill to swallow. I've been through many of these potential closures. But ultimately, Victoria told some stories about past kids that have come, and we don't get to see that story come back to us historically, but now we have more and more. And there's so many kids that say, thank you. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for what you said. Thank you for that moment that changed my life. And with the stroke of a pen, somebody could abolish that and make that go away. And that makes me sad. And I love the people here. I'm the president of the sports club for our community, youth sports. I love being here, and the thought of not being here and what it would do to the area, the community, and especially the kids that we serve. There are so many amazing things when these kids come through the door, and they'll fight you nonstop. But they realize that you don't give up. We never give up. We don't stop believing in them, their families. And they sell a beautiful area, and we've heard stories of Pacific County and being a depressed area. And we've heard stories of people that have suffered in their lifetime. We all make bad choices. We've all done things that we wish we would have done. We just hope there's people in this room that are going to reach out their hand, Teresa Miller, giving a hand up and saying, here, I got you. These kids going to a different facility, yes, they can call us tomorrow. They can put our 35 kids on a bus and move our kids somewhere else. But does that best serve the kids that we're working with? No. And I hope someday, and someday soon, people realize that we have value down here. We're not just the far southwest corner of Washington State. We're here working for the youth of Washington State. I guess I did it for a little bit.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Wolf.
So I don't follow instructions well. I didn't sign up to talk either. So we do have the facts and figures behind keeping us open. There's been a couple of studies that the state has paid lots of money for. The Heiser report and another study done by Andrew Fox. In the Heiser report said smaller numbers of youth, higher numbers of staff, more individualized counseling, more time spending in group counseling, more time spending activities that are structured where we're doing basketball and helping them to practice their skills. Because if you can get fouled hard and not go after somebody, for these guys, it's a huge thing. So we give them opportunities. If we follow the DBT structure, which I just got hired on as the DBT specialist to supervise dialectical behavior therapy out at the youth camp. If we deliver that to fidelity for each, there's 3 points, 1 point for what we do in the counseling session, 1 point for what we're doing in the groups that we run, that are counsel groups, and 1 point for how we structure the environment they're living. For every point that we meet in those 3 criteria, the youth are over 50% less likely to recidivate. So the information is there. There's no question about it. If you want to stop the prison pipeline, you can't forget about the kids that are in the pipeline. You have to give them a good, solid opportunity to get out. And we do that. We are committed. We have the longevity. We have staff who have been trained up in providing this. And when you take away this pool of knowledge and experience, you can't take a kid who's coming out of college or even somebody who got their master's or even a PhD and train them to be able to respond appropriately to these young men who are hurting, who have done stuff that they know that just, they cry themselves to sleep at night over thinking about some of the stuff they've done. They do have a heart. They do care, but they can't show that in front of the people, but they break down in counseling. They share with you about their hurts, their pains, what they're concerned about. And when you shove them into another facility where they don't have the experience, where they don't have the training, where they're already dealing with the population issues that they've got, don't try and shove everybody into one place. I'm the first one to say, shut us down if there's no more youth that need us. If there's no more youth that need us, not shut us down and hope that something is going to change, when if you don't make the changes for them and help them to find a different path, they're not going to receive that. They're not the kids that we got 20 years ago when I myself was a product of closure of Mission Creek and came out here 20 years ago. And when I came out here, yeah, we had some kids that they were first time offense. They stole they stole the judge's neighbor's car. So, well, you're going, that's too close to home for me. So, we get the single offense kids that were coming out here, but that's not who we serve now. We serve youth who are profoundly damaged through the drug usage of their parents, through the destructive environment that they're growing up in, through the society that is running rampant with trying to protect themselves by forming gangs and having all these reasons that are really just for these kids to get involved in gangs, because their lives are shitty and they need somebody to watch their back when they're walking through some of these neighborhoods. So I get it. I understand it. I understand that need to belong and feel protected. And we can provide that out here without them being in a gang. And we do have the youth that come out to us. We've got a lot of them who are not gang involved. But if they go to other facilities, it's either you don't go out on open campus or you choose a side. And I want to provide for those youth that aren't involved a place to be safe, and for those who are involved, an opportunity to participate in a Hispanic group where, if you're going to try and claim, if you're going to throw up this, if you're going to disrespect each other, then you're not in the group. And then they get together and they make some wonderful food. I love to be invited to the Hispanic group. Anyway, so, but anyway, we give them an opportunity to interact with their bitter rivals that if they had saw on the street, they would shoot. And then now they're out there playing basketball and doing great. Sometimes even on the same team and doing great. So keep us open.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
I just have one really quick thing to say, because I've heard the school to prison pipeline comment several times, but that actually isn't what the youth camp does. The youth camp is a work camp, part of the camp's program. So if we could start thinking of the work camp to workforce pipeline, these guys are here, they're learning some things so they can go out into the workforce. Work camp to workforce pipeline, not school to prison pipeline. Because our kids are going out there, they're going to have the skills to get up in the morning, get a certain way of dressing, and work with the team. So work camp, workforce pipeline.
Thank you. What do we want?
Save Naselle Youth Camp.
What do we want?
Save Naselle Youth Camp.
What do we want?
Save Naselle Youth Camp.
When?
Now.
When?
Now.
What do we want?
Save Naselle Youth Camp.
When?
Now.
What do we want?
Save Naselle Youth Camp.
When?
Now.
Yes, we want the governor to hear our voice. We want to keep this up, this fight for these youth. It's an honor to work with those kids and be there for them when they're struggling and they're in their worst critical moment, and you're able to help them and bring them out of that moment. And they remember that. They don't forget that. That's the work that we do there. And it's our job to keep us doing that. Keep this place open for the youth and for the community. I appreciate everybody coming out here. Let's keep sending our emails, calling the governor, let everybody and anybody know, get that awareness out. Man, this really should be on a national level because it's really big, right? You're taking away a camp that helps youth, that has a really great track record, and the effect that it's having on a community across America. There's already been too many little communities shut down because of a closure of a job place, right? But this place at Naselle Youth Camp is really important for the youth, and that's what we need to put out there to everybody. Call the governor, email the governor, tell your friends, pass it on to anybody that'll hear you. And I hope everybody has a good night. And when you leave here, be careful walking on the road, please. Watch out for deer and elk if you have to go back to Olympia, or Aberdeen, But I'm grateful for everybody that's come up here and spoke. People that are watching live stream, thank you. And, may Creator bless this community and the youth that we serve. Thank you.